Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Standing Committee on Homelessness for the City of Vista. We will call to order our meeting at 8:30 a.m. Could we please have a roll call from our city clerk?
The record shall reflect that the chair and vice chair and ex officio members Green and Contreras are in attendance.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now have the approval of our minutes for May 16th, 2024. I don't believe that there are any changes. If not, we will move to approve and seconded, and we will approve the minutes. We do have one change to our agenda. I wanted to focus on our strategic plan to address homelessness, so we removed item D1 to come back to another session. That would allow us to start with reviewing our strategic plan to address homelessness. Is that all right with everybody? All right. We will go to any oral communications that we may have. Looks like we have some folks to speak on the workshop item. So let's go ahead and have a presentation for our implementation on our strategic plan to address homelessness. If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by raising the raise hand feature or by pressing 9 or by submitting a request to speak card to the city clerk. Homeless Services Manager Jonathan Lung will introduce the item.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and ex officio members of the Standing Committee on Homelessness. My name is Jonathan Lung, Homeless Services Program Manager. This morning's item will provide an update on the implementation of the strategic plan to address homelessness in Vista. Also with me today are Housing Program Manager Eric Bungie and Management Analyst Daniel Sturman, who will also give portions of this morning's update. Representatives from our strategic plan partners are also here today and will be available for questions from the committee. The strategic plan to address homelessness was adopted in March 2020 and identifies 3 goals to ensure that homelessness, when it does occur, is a rare and brief and one-time experience. These 3 goals are the prevention of homelessness, which focuses on the promotion of self-sufficiency and stable housing for people at risk of homelessness; improving quality of life, which focuses on providing meaningful resources to individuals experiencing homelessness and mitigating public health and safety impacts to all Vista residents; and the reduction of homelessness, which focuses on providing long-term solutions to connect people with appropriate housing and supportive services through trauma-informed and person-centered approaches that maintain the dignity and respect of every individual as they address their barriers to housing. The strategic plan establishes 7 strategies within its 3 goals, which have evolved over time based on City Council's direction. The current strategies include the homelessness working groups, housing retention, home share, encampment cleanup, governmental and legislative advocacy, securing of shelter beds, and social worker outreach. Currently operating activities supporting these strategies include the internal homelessness and Vista Service Providers working groups, the Vista Emergency Housing Assistance Program, an upcoming Housing Innovation Pilot Program, the Alliance for Regional Solutions Shelter Network, Vista Safe Parking, the Buena Creek Navigation Center, and homelessness outreach. The strategic plan operates through funding from multiple sources, including federal, state, and local appropriations. These include encampment resolution funding from the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, permanent local housing allocation from the California Department of Housing and Community Development Block Grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, successor agency funds established by the California Health and Safety Code, Section 34176.1, state budget earmark funds secured by Assemblymember Tasha Horvath and Senator Catherine Blakespear, American Rescue Plan Act from the U.S. Department of the Treasury, and year-end fund balances from local revenues. Since adoption through March 2024, the strategic plan has appropriated $16 million and spent roughly $4.5 million to address homelessness in Vista. This morning's item will provide updates since the last strategic plan update, covering the period of October 2023 through March 2024. These updates will include the 2024 point in time count results, the operationalization of the Vista Emergency Housing Assistance Program and Buena Creek Navigation Center, Vista's encampment resolution funding round 3 proposal, and as directed by City Council, will also include a housing program update. Earlier this year, on January 25th, 2024, San Diego's designated Continuum of Care, the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, or RTFH, coordinated the annual homeless census known as the point-in-time count. This year's point-in-time count identified 10,605 individuals experiencing homelessness in San Diego County, with 6,110 of them living unsheltered, which is an 18% increase in unsheltered homelessness compared to last year. This includes 1,741 individuals experiencing homelessness in North County, 1,223 of which were unsheltered, which is a 70% increase in unsheltered homelessness in North County. In Vista, 271 individuals were counted as experiencing homelessness, with 170 of those living unsheltered. This is a 93% increase in unsheltered homelessness counted in Vista compared to last year. It should be noted that HUD only mandates that the point-in-time count be held once every 2 years and only receives data on the county-wide results. Annual point-in-time counts in San Diego and breakdown of counts by region as presented by the RTFH is done at its own discretion for the benefit of local stakeholders. This year's sheltered count in Vista included an emergency shelter and transitional housing programs participating in HMIS. Vista's emergency shelter count included Operation Hope, which had 24 clients enrolled at the time of the count. HMIS participating transitional housing programs included programs operated by North County Lifeline and Solutions for Change, and had 77 clients enrolled at the time of the count. The point-in-time count also reported on housing resource utilization, which showed a total capacity of 97 beds at permanent supportive housing programs operated by Solutions for Change at 32% utilization. RTFH has also confirmed that the Buena Creek Navigation Center falls within the area that is counted towards Vista, and with the facility opening in March of this year, it will be included starting with next year's point-in-time count. Since 2016, Vista point-in-time count has seen fluctuations with counts in each category. There was no point-in-time count held in 2021 due to COVID, and non-HMIS participating transitional housing programs are relied on to self-report their utilization. 2024 was the first time that any transitional housing counts were provided since 2019. In addition to the point-in-time census, the strategic plan collects data from its operators, including its street outreach team. During the first program year in 2020 to 2021, strategic plan outreach served a total of 196 individuals, 367 during the second, 445 during the third, and so far between October 2023 and March 2024, 369 individuals. The strategic plan outreach program included homelessness prevention during its second program year, so sheltered count began with the second program year. Unduplicated clients served by the strategic plan outreach program has also been determined by program year to measure the number of individuals served by homelessness outreach for the first time in Vista since plan adoption. During the first program year, 196 individuals were served for the first time in Vista, 207 during the second year, 290 during the third, and so far between October 23 and March 24, 169 individuals were served for the first time in Vista. To prevent individuals and families at risk of homelessness from losing their housing, the City Council approved an agreement with MAC for the Vista Emergency Housing Assistance Program, or VHAP, on January 9th, 2024, in support of the housing retention strategy of the strategic plan. VHAP provides Vista households with up to $10,000 and up to 6 months of financial support, including rental, mortgage, and utility assistance, including arrears. Awards began in March 2024, and during that first month, $86,316 were awarded to 10 households, preventing 28 residents from losing their housing. Other public assistance programs VHAP awardees receive include CalFresh, CalWorks, Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC Nutritional Program, and Medi-Cal. 39 additional applicants did not qualify for the program for either living outside of Vista or were already experiencing homelessness. VHAP was preceded by the Homeless Prevention Pilot Program, which supported the housing retention strategy of the strategic plan. And between the pilot program, VHAP, and Exodus Outreach Housing Navigation Programs, The strategic plan has provided $461,185 to prevent 148 Vista residents from losing their housing since adoption through March 2024. In support of the home share strategy of the strategic plan, staff submitted a proposal for a shared housing program in response to a supernofo from RTFH on October 31st, 2023. In January 2024, RTFH contacted staff to propose a joint program between Vista, La Mesa, and nonprofit townspeople who had all submitted similar proposals, and insufficient funding remained to award all three separately. A joint proposal was created and submitted, and on May 7th, 2024, Vista received an award letter from RTFH for its share of the program, budgeted at $336,809. The awarded program design includes the master leasing of multi-bedroom units to be subleased to individual tenants at risk or experiencing homelessness for each room. Townspeople currently operates a shared housing collaborative throughout San Diego County and utilizes an online roommate matching website to match individuals as potential roommates based on personal preferences. Meetups are then facilitated by townspeople staff, who will then also match the roommates to a suitable housing unit. Housing units are generally market rate units whose owners will be engaged by landlord engagement specialists, and the Shared Housing Collaborative and Vista-specific Housing Innovation Pilot Program effectively utilizes existing market rate housing units and disseminates them as naturally occurring affordable housing stock. Vista's portion of the Housing Innovation Pilot Program will be subcontract to townspeople who will provide personnel dedicated to Vista and administer $200,000 in flex funds for master lease payments and tenant supports to facilitate shared housing in Vista. Staff expects to recommend an agreement for these services with townspeople to City Council in August. Assembly Bill 1418 prevents local governments from imposing penalties against the resident, owner, tenant, landlord, or other person as a consequence of contact with a law enforcement agency. AB 1418 also prohibits the local government from requiring or encouraging a landlord to evict or penalize a tenant because of the tenant's association with another tenant or household member who has had contact with the law enforcement agency or has a criminal conviction, or to perform a criminal background check of a tenant or a prospective tenant. AB 1418 became effective on January 1st, 2024. The strategic plan continues to work to improve the quality of life for all members of the community, which includes assisting those who are experiencing homelessness and mitigating public health and safety impacts. Between October 2023 and March 2024, 54 encampments were reported on private property, with 52 of those resolved by the property owner. 103 72-hour notices of property removal were posted for obstructions to the public right-of-way, and 14 tons of trash were collected on public property, which included 4 tons collected from the Hacienda Biological Preserve overlay. To work towards reducing homelessness in Vista, the strategic plan provides homelessness outreach and housing navigation services through Exodus Recovery, who have served 369 clients between October 2023 and March 2024. 200 of those clients were engaged for the first time before October 2023, and 169 engaged for the first time during the reporting period. The most common source of referral for services with Exodus came directly from the client, with the next two most common sources of referral for services coming from city staff and during street outreach. A total of 479 referrals for services were provided to clients during this period, with housing navigation, emergency shelter, and benefits assistance being the most common service referrals. As outreach workers engage with Vista's unsheltered residents, an offer for a shelter bed is provided to every unsheltered resident. If an offer for shelter is accepted by a client, outreach workers will provide a referral for the client to an appropriate shelter, and once the shelter accepts the referral, the client may then accept or reject that referral. During the reporting period, 110 shelter referrals were made for 70 clients, and 36 of the 110 referrals were accepted by the client. Referrals for shelter were made between 1 and 5 times for each client, with an average of 1.5 referrals made per client. During the reporting period, the strategic plan successfully housed 10 adults and 6 minor children in 10 households. 1 household was placed with the use of a Hopwell voucher, 1 with a rapid rehousing voucher, 2 utilizing deposit assistance, 4 with short to medium-term rental assistance, and 2 without any financial assistance nor ongoing subsidy. As of March 31st, 2024, 67 clients and 57 households who are currently housed have been housed for at least 3 months. 69% of housed clients have retained housing for 6 months or longer, and 37% of housed clients have retained housing for over 1 year. Through March 2024, the strategic plan has housed 135 adult individuals since its adoption. Of the individuals served during the reporting period, 195 individuals are living in a place not meant for human habitation. 55 individuals are living in a temporary accommodation with a maximum defined stay, such as transitional housing or rehabilitation program, and 119 individuals are living in housing without a maximum defined stay, including permanent housing. 70 of the clients in housing are living in their own rental unit. The strategic plan also provides interim shelter for Vista residents experiencing homelessness with its safe parking program operated by Jewish Family Service of San Diego, which provides up to 25 parking spaces for individuals and families living in their vehicles. During the reporting period, the safe parking program served 86 individuals within 58 households, including 19 minor children. 17 households entered safe parking while experiencing homelessness in Vista, 32 households while experiencing homelessness in North County, and 9 households entered the program while experiencing homelessness in other parts of San Diego County. There were 26 positive exits during the reporting period, with an average length of stay in the program of 45 days before positively exiting. 10 positive exits were to family reunification, 3 to specialty care facilities, including substance abuse treatment, 11 directly into permanent housing, and 2 to other shelter facilities. There were also 23 negative exits from the program during the reporting period, all of which were exited to a place not meant for human habitation. There were an additional 5 clients that became ineligible for the safe parking program due to having a vehicle becoming inoperable. Average enrollment in the safe parking program during the reporting period was 80%, with average nightly occupancy at 58%. Reasons for low utilization have included increased gas prices, limiting client mobility. In March 2024, the program began over-enrolling to better utilize available spaces on a nightly basis. Recently, city staff was contacted by Dr. Bronner's Magical Soaps president, Michael Bronner, who inquired on how Dr. Bronner's could assist with the program. Staff have been coordinating with JFS and Dr. Bronner's to provide daily meal delivery for the safe parking program clients. Daily delivered meals would cost approximately $60,000 annually, and Dr. Bronner's has committed to providing a matching grant, and with city staff are currently soliciting a matching donor to begin the meal program. The strategic plan is also contracted for shelter beds within the Alliance for Regional Solutions Emergency Shelter Network since its adoption. On September 26, 2023, a new contract was approved, which reimburses the Alliance for shelter bed nights utilized by Vista residents experiencing homelessness, and a contract ceiling of $200,000. Shelter bed night costs vary with each shelter and were calculated with annual operating budget and shelter bed nights available at each shelter. One shelter bed night cost at Operation Hope North County costs $66.89. $84.63 at La Posada de Guadalupe, $108 at Haven House, $88.34 at Interfaith Family Shelter, and $72.29 at Interfaith Rotational Shelter Network. The $200,000 contract ceiling had been reached during January 2024, and through March 2024, total cost of shelter for Vista residents experiencing homelessness was $442,853. During the reporting period, 58 Vista residents utilized a total of 4,279 shelter bed nights. 19 Vista residents utilized 933 bed nights at Operation Hope. 7 individuals utilized 391 bed nights at La Posada. 16 individuals utilized 1,426 bed nights at Haven House. 16 individuals utilized 1,514 bed nights at Interfaith Family Shelter, and 1 individual utilized 15 bed nights at Interfaith Rotational Shelter Network and was later sheltered at Interfaith Family Shelter included with the count above. During the reporting period, 8 individuals moved into permanent housing, with 6 individuals in 2 households moving into their own apartments, and 2 individuals in the same household reunifying with family. 1 individual was enrolled into recuperative care, 2 individuals were enrolled into substance abuse programs, 4 individuals were negatively exited for program violations, 9 exited without reporting their destination, and 34 clients remained at the shelters. La Posada de Guadalupe, operated by Catholic Charities in Carlsbad, is currently advocating for an expansion of their campus, which currently provides 50 beds for migrant farm workers and 50 beds for single men. As agriculture declined in the area, the need for migrant farm worker beds has also declined, and the 50 beds allocated for farm workers have been underutilized. Due to covenants held by HCD, who provided a loan for the construction and provision of those beds for migrant workers, Catholic Charities is seeking an exemption from HCD to allow for those beds to be available for persons experiencing homelessness. If granted, the south building would be reconstructed with 3 stories, and La Posada would increase their capacity to shelter up to 150 men and 45 beds for women and women with children. The project would cost approximately $12 million, and construction is expected to require 1 year. These are some renderings of the design of the proposed facility with comparison of the existing building above and renderings of the proposed construction below. These images show comparison of the existing structure above and renderings of the proposed construction below from a bird's eye view. On January 9th, 2024, the City Council approved an agreement for operator services of the Buena Creek Navigation Center, which is a semi-congregate, low-barrier interim housing program that is jointly funded by the cities of Vista and Encinitas and readily accepts partners and pets. Operating costs and shelter beds are allocated to Vista and Encinitas at a 3-to-1 ratio, with 36 beds available for Vista residents and 12 beds available for Encinitas residents. The grand opening was held on March 1st, 2024, and client intake began phasing in the following week. Most referrals for intake of Vista residents came from Exodus Recovery, with a large majority of those referrals for individuals living in a place not meant for human habitation. Most clients taken into the VCNC have been experiencing their most recent period of homelessness for 1 year or more. During March 2024, there were 2 positive exits from Vista residents who were reunified with family, and 1 negative exit from a client that self-exited to a place not meant for human habitation. All exits were within 1 week of intake, with an average of 0.67 days before exiting. Next, Daniel Sturman, Management Analyst, will provide an overview of the city's proposed application for Encampment Resolution Funding Round 3, or ERF 3. Based on consensus from the Standing Committee and ex officio members present this morning, the proposal for ERF 3 will be recommended to City Council on June 25th for approval of the application submission.
Morning, Council members. Daniel Sturman, Management Analyst, Housing and Homeless Services Division. Today, I'll be going over with you the city's up-and-coming proposal for Encampment Resolution Fund Round 3, or ERF 3. Encampment Resolution Funding Round 3 is a $400 million bill authorized through SB 197, assisting local jurisdictions in ensuring the safety and wellness of people experiencing homelessness in encampments, provides grants to local jurisdictions and COCs to resolve critical encampment concerns and transition individuals into safe and stable housing, and encourage a data-informed, coordinated approach to addressing encampment concerns. Vista was awarded $1.8 million for ERF 1 back in 2022. At that time, we were awarded a contract to provide for homeless outreach and land restoration. The area of focus at that time was limited to the Hacienda BPO. With the up-and-coming ERF 3 grant, we've expanded the services we'll be funding and increased the land area served. Unfortunately, under ERF 3 guidelines, land restoration is no longer allowable. The map you see above is the highlighted area in orange is the proposed ERF 3 service area that was developed in conjunction with Caltrans. It is roughly 3 square miles of the city that spans approximately 4.8 linear miles along State Route 78 from Emerald Drive to Sycamore Avenue. It encompasses areas with high amounts of visible persons experiencing homelessness and also areas where large encampments have been known to gather in the past, such as the South Sycamore area, the BPO, and downtown Vista area. This map does include the previous ERF1 grant area and will continue the work that has already been done within that service area. The city's application for ERF3 will be covering 4 areas: pathways to permanent housing and housing retention, support and extend current interim housing options, create and extend positions within the city of Vista, and fund an encampment-focused outreach program. First topic I'll be covering is the pathways to and retention of permanent housing. To help increase housing stock available to clients, we will be requesting funds for landlord engagement and incentives. This includes an internal housing specialist position whose job it will be to develop rapport with and keep track of landlords willing to rent to our clients. This individual will also be responsible for dispersing any financial incentive to landlords and processing of any claims of damage to the unit. We will also be requesting money to provide rapid rehousing style funding that includes housing stability case management for up to 12 months. We plan on leveraging VHAP for clients that are struggling past the 12-month mark so as to provide continued case management services to the individual and attempt to prevent that individual in returning back to experiencing homelessness. To better support existing interim housing opportunities provided by the City of Vista, we will be requesting operating reserves for the Buena Creek Navigation Center and also extend funding for 2 additional years for safe parking. Within the city's own staff, the city is requesting funding to extend both the Homeless Services Program Manager and Management Analyst position out to June 30, 2027. The city is also requesting funding for the housing specialist position, whose job it will be to work with existing partnered landlords, finding new landlords to work with, and distributing incentive and contingency funds. With the ERF3 funding opportunity, we will also be requesting funds to operate a homeless outreach program within the service area. This outreach contract will provide seamless support from first contact to housing placement to housing retention support when appropriate. Under this contract, we also expect that the selected provider will operate a direct contact line for community and self-referrals for individuals experiencing homelessness. Encampment Resolution Funding 3, we will be submitting an RFP, request for proposal, for an outreach program that will total $618,545.02 over 34 months. This will include 1 program manager, 1 program assistant, 1 housing navigator, 3 teams of outreach workers and peer support specialists, and 3 housing stability case manager. It'll also include $100,000 over 34 months for incidentals during street outreach case management. We will also be requesting $2.5 million for at least 125 households for rapid rehousing style funds, and requesting $10,000 for at least 25 individuals for family reunification services. The city is planning to extend the positions of their Homeless Services Program Manager and Management Analyst, which are currently funded through December 31st, 2026, another 6 months to June 30, 2027. Total amount to extend those positions comes out to $166,938. The city is planning on creating a new staff position, a housing specialist, who will help maintain and develop relationships with landlords, which will run $386,640 over the 34 months. The city is also requesting $80,000 in funds for landlord incentives and contingency funds that will be dispersed by the housing specialist. I want to note that I forgot 2 numbers I'd like to include in this presentation. The 2 years totaling for safe parking is $1,029,876, and we are requesting $388,412 for operational funds for the BCNC, which is 10% of their operating funds. That is the end of my presentation, and I'd like to introduce Housing Program Manager Eric Bunke.
It's different standing over here. Good morning. How is housing connected to homelessness? It's not specifically called out in our strategic plan per se, but as council noted, it's a priority for sure. Housing is a missing puzzle piece that addresses a fundamental need for shelter and stability. Housing provides individuals and families with a safe and stable place to live, which is essential for maintaining health, safety, and overall well-being. Without stable housing, individuals experiencing homelessness face numerous challenges, including exposure to the elements, lack of basic amenities, and increased vulnerabilities to physical and mental health issues. Overall, the lack of affordable housing is a complex situation, and the cost of housing in California has been a significant issue for many years. More specifically, a study out of the University of San Francisco included 3,000 surveys and 365 in-depth interviews from individuals all across different regions of California. Their study revealed that housing costs served as a barrier to keep, also as a barrier to re-enter back into housing. And just for comparison, building on the economic factors, there are some figures on the screen here that kind of show there's been a steady increase over the past 3 years of rental housing costs. And please note, these are average costs across all types of households, so apartments, houses, ADUs, et cetera. More specifically, what does that look like in the landscape of Vista? The most recent CHAZ data was released in September 23 and is based on the 5-year estimate from the AC, or the census data, that ranges from 2016 to 2020. In total, the city roughly has 31,000 households, and of those, about 50% of those are rental households. Breaking that down, of those rental households, 67% of those, or 10,500, are under 80% AMI, so they would be considered low-income rental households. If we want to take that one step further, of that 15,000, 41% of those are under 50% AMI. Now, as a separate comparison of those rental households, so we're still taking the total number here, the 15,000, roughly 15,600, 26% of those are cost burden, which means they're paying anywhere from 30 to 50% of their take-home income towards housing-related costs. And in addition, 26% of those are severely cost burden, which means they're paying more than 50% of their take-home income towards housing-related costs. So essentially, that's 53% of all rental households are considered cost burden or severely cost burden. And sadly, this aligns with a Habitat for Humanity did a cost for home campaign that states that 1 in 5 families in California and then 1 in 6 across the US pay more than half of their income towards housing-related costs, which often causes them to choose between paying for housing or nutrition, reliable transportation, health needs, etc. So let's see how that plays out in the real world. So more specifically to Vista, let's take this as an example. So $60,000 could be considered a salary for one person, or it's roughly 2 people working full-time minimum wage at $16 an hour. It's roughly $61,000 if you break that math out. Referencing back to the CHAZ data, this is a scenario that 41% of our rental households in Vista experience. So taking that $60,000 income, dividing it by 12, and then timesing by 30, which is a reasonable housing cost, that family can roughly afford $1,500. If you take that out to the fair market for the average studio apartment is almost $2,000. And then if you take that out, so that's just for apartments. If you take that out across all housing types for rental households, the average 1-bedroom is $2,100, which would result in this family being cost burden. If they were able to get an affordable housing unit, that's a 50% unit or lower, their housing costs would be controlled and potentially leading to better life outcomes. So more on affordable housing. We've heard about the current economics, but what is the city's response? Prior, with Jonathan and Daniel, we have heard a lot of different types of programs that are assisting people and at a lot of different levels and that are facing this sad reality. The development of new affordable housing is a crucial step in serving this need. Affordable housing is important. It fosters financial stability and ensures that individuals and families can afford their rent without sacrificing other necessities. Stabilizing housing can also allow to lead to positive outcomes like a foundation for households to invest in education, secure employment, improve their quality of life, etc. So more specifically to Vista, from 2012 to 2022, over that 10-year period, the City Council has approved and built 4 affordable housing developments totaling 276 units, between those developments. Council most recently, council and staff has seen a rising need for more housing and accelerated its approach to address this. More recently, in 2023, council approved the funding for the development of Santa Fe Senior Village, which is on track to be completed in September 2024. This is the city's first funded permanent supportive housing development that has led to conversations for more developments of this nature. More specifically, this development covers 2 units for veterans that are experiencing homelessness. It's 100% affordable for income levels for 0 to 40% AMI, and residents will have access to services, including case management, mental health care, substance abuse services, counseling and advocacy, and peer-to-peer support activities, and physical well-being. The city is currently in negotiations with Wakeland and Tideline, which are the partner developers, to produce more affordable housing on 2 city-owned sites at 211 Palm and 902 Vista Village. These 2 properties will approximately yield 126 units. These will come to council for approval and conversation on June 25th. With the approval of these 2 sites, as well as the development at Santa Fe Senior, that's a total of 180 new units that are coming online in the near future. Again, in comparison, over the last 10 years, 276. Fair housing is a crucial piece of homelessness as well. And how does this tie back? So fair housing can also prevent homelessness by advocating for equal access to housing, supporting those experiencing homelessness, and removing discriminatory barriers. Housing retention by providing unjust evictions, educating tenants about their rights, and pushing for policies that safeguard against housing instability. The city contracts with CSA San Diego to provide its fair housing services, which is a free service to our residents. And we ask that the council please save the date, June 28th. The city is partnering with St. Francis Catholic Church and their social justice ministry to host a housing resource fair. Different city departments, as well as some of our nonprofit partners like CSA, MAC, who administers our rental assistance program, will be there to share information, assist residents, and answer questions. Staff is working towards hosting a few of these workshops throughout the year, workshops and clinics throughout the year.
Finally, we'd like to thank all of the strategic plan stakeholders, including the City Council, our coworkers on staff, and all of our strategic plan partners who are here today as well to respond to any council questions. This concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to our speakers. We have a few. We have Beatrice from Operation Hope, if you'd like to join us at the podium and share your comments. Thank you for being here.
Council members, thank you so much for having us here and inviting us to the table. Thank you for your dedication to addressing this national crisis that is impacting the city of Vista along with our sister cities. Your commitment means the world to us, especially as a shelter who addresses homelessness for families with children experiencing homelessness and single women. I wanted to share some statistics because we serve families with kids. So according to CalPADS, the city of Vista has 897 students experiencing homelessness. In your neighboring cities, and the reason I'm giving you the neighboring cities is because we know homelessness is fluid, right? They move from one area to another to survive. And that's 897 in Vista, San Marcos 796, and in Oceanside 275. Now, the National Alliance to End Homelessness in their most recent report indicated that there were 186,084 individuals within a family experiencing homelessness. That translates to 57,563 families. Those are the ones that are being captured, that are reporting. There's a lot of fear and a lot of shame in admitting that you're homeless, that you're sleeping in a car, and fear that your children might be removed from you, right? So out of that, within the city of Vista, we have 897. out of the 57 nationally, 57,000. That's a lot of families. So I just ask that you remember, as you're trying to figure out how to spend every dollar to address homelessness, remember that there's not one phase to homelessness, and therefore there's not one model that fits the need to address homelessness. We need to also think about the multiple models. We need the safe spaces, the healthy spaces, because families need it, children need it, especially if the families are working really hard to obtain and maintain their sobriety. Oftentimes we think of homelessness as the individual sleeping out in the open air, right? But we often, because that's what we see, that's what the media is showing us. We also have to think about the family. I'm not saying that our military and the other individuals who are there are less important, but I'm also asking that you consider the families with children. Later, in a little bit, you're going to hear from two cases. One of our alumni who graduated from my program almost 10 years ago, and another recent one. I want you to hear directly from them. You have our impact report. You know our story. I consider us your baby, Operation Hope. And so I just want to thank you again for putting us at the forefront in the way we address homelessness for families.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have Michelle, also with Operation Hope.
Good morning. My name is Michelle. I just wanted to share my experience going through Operation Hope. I believe it was over 8 years ago now. I did experience a hardship, and so I lost everything. And I found Operation Hope for me and my son at the time. He was a teenager. And so when I went in there, I knew that I was going to get the help that I needed for myself. Before that, I was kind of like living here, there, and everywhere. But I knew going into Operation Hope, I knew I was going to get that help for myself and my son. Through the different education programs that they had back then, they had like how to invest your money, how to, if you needed, time to learn how to open up a bank account. I had all those experiences, but what they provided for the clients was important. The one thing that I will say that they didn't have at the time that I think is important is housing. I just happened to be on a list, and I was on that list for a very long time. And when I went through the program, my name got called to go into affordable housing. And at the time when I was there, I was helping others look at different options when it came to affordable housing because I learned so much. And I shared a lot of things with the program and with other parents for childcare, for how to enlist in affordable housing. I think that for California, especially for Vista, we need housing. If we're going through any type of transition as far as like a shelter or another transitional housing, we need once you go out of whatever, let's say the shelter, you need to know that that family can go into transitional housing. It takes a while to get on your feet. It really does. But having that support in getting into transitional housing or affordable housing is a win-win situation for the family. I know for myself, it really helped me to get back on my feet, to have that stability in not just my life, but for my son. And having that help with Operation Hope really helped me, because they helped me get my blankets. They helped me get, the little things that I did not have. They helped me get established back into where I needed to be. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your testimony. We also have Jeanette with Operation Hope.
Good morning. My name is Jeanette. A little bit about me. My struggle started back in 2011. I became addicted to methamphetamines. I've been on the street, active addiction this whole time. Throughout my journey, I had kids. I walked out on my kids due to my addiction. Coming into Operation Hope, I was actually running away from a domestic violence. I had just given birth to my now 15-month-old, and I walked into the shelter with a 5-week-old baby. Walking into that shelter was just the most beautiful thing that could have ever happened to me. The second I walked in there, it was a family. I'm very grateful for organizations like Operation Hope. You know, it's been honestly the foundation to not just who I am today, but to what I have today. You know, being able to be a present mom to my child and be able to reunite with my other kids and be able to, you know, one of the things I've learned to be more grateful for today is having a roof over my head, which you guys touched on housing. You know, it's a real struggle out there. During my time at Operation Hope, I've learned to pick up tools along the way that helped me work on my financial situation, that helped me save, that helped me be a productive member of society. I was able to enroll in college, which was one of my biggest dreams in, you know, in the world. Unfortunately, because of the situation with housing nowadays, I've had to drop out of school. I can't afford to go to school and provide a roof over my son's head. I'm grateful for places like Exodus Recovery that helped me put a deposit down for the place I have now. I was in Operation Hope for about 10 months. I exited out January 8th, and till this day, I'm still gratefully in the place where I'm at. I rent a little 300 squares unit in Oceanside, and I'm paying $1,650. I bring home less than $3,000 a month. So at least half of my income goes to rent, without including my car payment, my insurance, my child support, my kids' costs. So housing is a struggle when it comes down to that. But at the same time, I'm grateful that I have places like Operation Hope where if I need help, I can come back. If I need food, I can come back. If I need somebody to talk to, if I need a caseworker, I have that privilege to come back to them. And that is all also thanks to the support that we get from the City of Vista. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Marilyn with Alliance for Regional Solutions.
Good morning, Mayor Franklin, City Council members and staff. I'm Mary Lynn McCorkle, the manager of the Alliance for Regional Solutions, and I want to thank you for the longstanding support that the City of Vista has provided to our bridge to housing shelters. Through this partnership, we've been able to provide shelter for many Vista residents and families this year. The Alliance has always looked at working with our city and nonprofit partners with a regional approach. When we work together to solve a problem as big as homelessness, we are stronger together. We will continue to collaborate next year through our shelter network and through our monthly Bridge to Housing Committee meetings, which bring together partners from all over North County to share resources, information, and ideas. Alliance leadership is also looking at new ways to improve communication between shelters and those on the front lines to streamline the process of getting people off the streets and into the shelters. Thank you again for your partnership.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers online? Oh, it looks like we have one more. Pete with Retread. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'll try to stay within my allotted time. I'm the program director of the Buena Creek Navigation Center with Retread. I just want to share a success story with you guys and with all of you, and also thank you guys. I want to thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank you, Deputy Mayor, and all of the City Council, especially you, Jonathan and Daniel, for making this happen and caring about the most vulnerable population within your city. I'm going to share two stories really quickly. I also want to thank Hannah for dreaming. She's a big dreamer, and she went after the RFP. We are a brand new organization, and here we are. And I believe we're doing a great job. And so I want to share two stories. There's a client that came into us and was in a very, very, very vulnerable position. Homeless, experiencing homelessness for over 40 years, born with a disease that troubled him, and then when his parents passed away, he just was on the streets. 40 years homeless, 40 years experiencing homelessness, sleeping on the streets. you can only imagine what all that entails. Since coming to the BCNC, he started to really strengthen. Just having support, having kindness around him, having case management around him, having people that care about him, he started to really strengthen. But while he was at the BCNC, he had an infection on his foot. And if he was not at the BCNC, the infection got within his bloodstream, and we saw him. Within 2 days, he went from like vibrant to like all the way to the point where I had to call the ambulance, get him into the place. And if he had that experience while he was still on the street, he would not be with us today. He would not be with us today. But because of you guys and because of you guys caring about your community and those that are less fortunate, he has now just signed his lease for his own permanent supportive housing. He's going to have a house for the rest of his life. He has support, he has care. The ending of his life would have been broken, lonely, confused, hurting, painful, and dying on the street. But instead, it was filled with support, love, encouragement, and people around him. And so I want to thank you guys. And on vice versa, this homelessness hits everybody. I have one more quick story. There's a person that he had 2 children. And the mother of his children left and moved to California. And he was a father that wanted to be with his children. And so he himself left a good paying job in Texas. He came out to California and he ended up on the streets of Vista. He actually was a janitor. He's a substitute janitor at the city of Vista School District.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Thank you. We really needed to hear those stories this morning. Thank you. We have Brandon with Interfaith Shelter Network.
Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Brandon Duran. I'm the Executive Director of the Interfaith Shelter Network. Our organization weaves together and coordinates faith communities and social service agencies in order to provide shelter for those who are situationally homeless. Not that long ago, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we received out of the blue an email from someone who has gone through the shelter program, who stayed at a local congregation and received case management services and was able to find a stable and better solution. I wanted to share with you a bit of the email that they sent. May this email find you and your family in the best of health. Please forgive this late correspondence that I wanted to share with you at the Interfaith Shelter Network, with every congregation I stayed with, and especially with my case manager. I'm reaching out to you in order to say thank you, and I can never thank God enough for your organization. Every volunteer at the congregation I met and every service provider did a phenomenal job. With the guidance and motivation of my case manager, I was able to start a business and achieve the goal we stated, a focus on housing. And I can currently say I'm renting a home, and this is in all caps, no longer homeless. You have been an angel to me, and I pray for you and your family daily. Every clinic I visited, every worker who came, all of you had the best of intentions and support for me. This program works, and I am a witness. In conclusion, I want to share to all who have heard that I will never forget you. Thank you all. This is just one testimony that came in, and it is a gift to be able to hear of the ways that the support from the Vista, as well as the other governmental agencies that support the Interfaith Shelter Network, continues to be able to take those dollars and make them into a tangible expression of hope and healing in the lives of others. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Now to member comments. We have Councilmember Green.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. First of all, thank you, Jonathan, Daniel, and Eric. Putting this report together was definitely no small feat, and it was a lot of information, kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I'm super excited that we got this all on paper so we can kind of digest it a little bit later, but I just want to thank you guys so much for your work. I know the hours of time and effort that go into this and all the meetings and just data crunching to put it in a little pretty picture slideshow for us is a lot of work. So first of all, thank you for that. Also, Operation Hope, Alliance for Regional Solutions, Retread, and Interfaith, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for showing up and kind of telling us, hey, this is what your money is doing in the community, and for the testimonies of the ladies whose lives have been changed. Congratulations, and thank you for showing up and speaking as well. As a city council, when we allocate funds, a lot of times it looks like a line item on a budget sheet where we're just shifting funds here and there. And to hear the stories and to actually see the people's lives that are changing by the funds that are allocated by this body is really amazing. I know I speak for my whole council when I say thank you. You've really touched us by your testimonies today and made what we do more worthwhile. We do this to serve our community, and the fruits of our labor are shown today by what you've given us here testimony-wise. So thank you. And hearing the story about the guy's life that was saved, I don't care how much money that BCNC cost. I never put a price on a life, and I know there's been a lot of stories from every organization of lives that have actually been saved. So hearing it got me a little choked up. I got a little watery right here, but I went ahead and wiped it away so nobody saw that stuff because I shaved my head so I look tougher now. Anyways, with that said, it was a great presentation. I had some questions and also just some stuff that I wanted to kind of touch on. The VHAP program seems amazing. It was kind of earlier in the presentation there. Question for you is, how much more money do we have in this fund right now?
So the availability of funds is through December 31st, 2026. I'm happy to report that the program has been administered very quickly and has been meeting a very high demand.
Exactly.
We've spent roughly half of it, and at this pace, we expect to have it fully expended by the end of this calendar year.
Okay, so my suggestion on that, and seeing how successful it was, is, these programs that we're going over that were successful, I took a little bit of data down on them. Those are the ones that I feel like as a council, I'd like at least to be pitched, say, hey, we're only using this much funding for this particular program, but this program is eating it up and it's really making a difference. I like knowing that. So we funded it through 2026. Doesn't sound like it's going to last that long, and that's when it's really effective. So as these funds come in, shifting, to programs that are working is great. One thing I was super excited about was the Buena Creek Navigation Center. Again, props to Retread on this. It looked like out of all of the placements, you had 36 out of 110 people accepted the placements, which is 33% success overall. When we talk about the Buena Creek Navigation Center, 14 out of 21 accepted, which is a 67% acceptance rate. And as a council, we spoke about putting a center in our city, and people didn't want to go to Escondido, they didn't want to go to Oceanside, they want to go to Carlsbad, and showing that data. I mean, I'm goosey's on my arms, okay? Knowing that people are actually doing what we said they would do. And it has a lot to do with the wraparound services, the environment, but also the proximity. People love Vista. It's my little sister. She's hot, bro. Everybody wants to be in Vista. Fantastic. So keep it up. Buena Creek Navigation Services. I loved that. Question I had about the townspeople thing you brought forward, and I know we tried the home share thing and it fell flat on its face, and I hope we don't allocate funding for that until we have good resources and numbers for that. But the townspeople thing sounds great, because this is an opportunity for somebody to rent a room in a house at market rate and actually have them vetted through an organization that will be placing them in a private residence. Is that correct?
That's correct, and receiving continued housing stability case management after their house as well.
Okay, now you said that we had 16 market rate units in Vista, or 16 market rate units was what I wrote down through this. Is that what we're targeting? Is it to get 16 market rate units, or?
I'm not sure where you're referencing those.
I just wrote it down right underneath. It said that we had $200,000 for 16 units.
Oh, yeah, okay, so with the availability of funding, is that?
Possibly.
Okay, so the $200,000, just to be clear, so that is to facilitate the master leasing. Now, that will pay for the master lease, but but the program will also recuperate those costs as the tenants are paying for their leases to the operator. So it should kind of replenish itself.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. Is I mean, because everybody, I want to be a part of that. Like you pay it for, so this fund will constantly be replenished. Then,
Yeah,
is what
ideally
sounds
it
like.
would be. Of course, there would be some consumable costs,
Yeah.
such as furniture or other things, but
This is
ideally,
actually
it's
going to help possibly younger people or older people or whoever's struggling with
Absolutely.
housing
Yep.
get into a property, and we pay those upfront costs. We assure the landlord that these people are going to be able to afford this. That way the landlord has the security, and then we actually help them get into housing. And as they pay that rent, the landlord funds that back to us in like a refund, basically, is kind of what it sounds like.
So the way it's going to be facilitated, townspeople will actually pay the landlord. The
Gotcha.
landlord will not have to collect any
Perfect.
revenues from the tenants.
And then townspeople
will
reimburses
coordinate
us.
all of that. Yeah, exactly right.
That is a wonderful program. I like that. I had a lot of sticky notes, by the way, before I got this slideshow, so it was good. AB 1418. I hadn't heard of this before. Now, when you rent a unit to anybody, you can't do a criminal background check?
I'll defer to the city attorney to add a little bit more, but it
Thank you, city attorney. Please do.
local governments from requiring that or compelling that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
anybody that we work with on an affordable housing standpoint, from a private sector standpoint, property owners, I just want to make sure we get the information clear. So from a private sector standpoint, they can still do what they want, but from a government standpoint through affordable housing,
We cannot compel that. Yep.
okay, so people don't have to be worried anymore. If you were worried about not getting affordable housing because you had a felony or a misdemeanor or maybe eviction or whatever before, it doesn't apply anymore. Don't sit in your shame. When you come to us, clean slate, we're ready to go. So I think this is a great thing when it comes to the government housing. Obviously, in the private sector, private property owners can do what they want. But from a government standpoint, I think this is a good opportunity because a lot of people won't even apply because they feel like they're going to get turned down, and maybe they've been turned down in the past. So as of January 1st, 2024, we can't turn you down for that. We can't even check it. So good to know, and I'm glad that our service providers got that information too. Another huge thing, and I know that the mayor and I had spoken about this before, so I love this program, the Family Reunification Service. You only have $10,000 allocated for this, and you had it allocated at $400 per person. It said there was an RFP going to go out for this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, is there an organization that already does this service that we're aware of, that we're looking for, or that we've found?
The Downtown San Diego Partnership, they operate a family reunification program, but it is located in downtown San Diego, so a little bit of a burden to get clients down there. They also only provide bus tickets, which sometimes can get a little bit confusing for especially people that might be older, been living on the streets for a while. So we budgeted significantly more for the costs to get somebody from point A to point B. Ideally, put them on a one-way plane ticket, so you're not getting off, getting on, getting off, getting on, having to keep track. We do feel that not everybody's going to utilize the whole $400 per individual. So I put a minimum of 25 people, but we'll be able to serve more.
Of course, and my question was, who's the service provider for this?
That'll be distributed by the outreach team directly.
Okay, so like whatever company we're contracting with.
Yeah,
for
so the
homeless-
outreach team will be able to either pay for somebody's housing costs or they'll be able to get them right back on a plane. We don't have to make any service referrals to somebody else. We can do it all in-house.
Okay, sounds good. Those were the questions that I had written down to start with. Thank you so much for your answers. Again, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to put this under my pillow, suck it all up from osmosis tonight. And if I have more questions, I'll probably find you in City Hall somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Councilmember Contreras.
Yes, I want to thank everybody who came today to hear, to speak, to provide testimony. I want to thank staff. I want to thank our contractors, Retread. And I want to thank the body of the council for all the work that we've done. We've come a long way in our strategies to prevent homelessness. And we've really gotten to a point where we're not having contentious dialogue. We are understanding that a huge part of what we're seeing is that the cost of living continues to just increase beyond what people can make. I really appreciate and am in unison with Councilmember Green's comments and questions, and I really appreciate how you investigated some of those aspects. Unfortunately, I do have to leave right after this, right after I speak, because I'm already late to work, but it's okay. So one of the things that I want to say is maybe something that no one else is going to touch upon, but it sounds like one of the strategies that potentially we don't have to prevent homelessness is workforce training. It sounds to me like we need to take a look at how we can help folks increase their wages, be resilient in an economic situation that is ever changing, because the gap between what you can make, the floor being the minimum wage, we saw clearly that you can be working a minimum wage job and have two folks working a minimum wage job, and you still cannot afford housing. I suspect that that will only get harder. I hope that as this council really dedicates creating more housing stock, affordable housing, deed-restricted housing, that we're able to maybe help folks a lot more. But I really feel that to prevent homelessness, not only is VHAP working excellent, but in tandem, we need to have folks lift their wages up. It is not an easy thing to do. I don't know if we need to start looking at how we can get folks into apprenticeship programs, right? How we can help folks. There's a testimony regarding trying to go to school and being unable to do that in tandem with, having to work so that you can keep your housing. What can we do to really help break barriers for folks where, potentially there's some kind of, allocation for additional skill training, because it's good to have that financial literacy, baseline. It's good to have a roof over your house. But when you're looking down your future, you want to have not only hope that you can be in a better economic situation, but you need to have the tools that help you get there. And there's, I feel like a lot of times folks, and I'm one of them, you only grow up seeing the network that your parents or family has, and you may not know that there are a lot of different pathways to increase your income, right? And I want to be able to help folks break generational cycles, and folks are willing, they're hungry to get more skills. I don't want, someone to see this as an additional barrier. So I don't know what we can do as a council, but I suspect that there is something that we can do, and I suspect that it's something to do with allocating, more resources. So I would love to see our staff address this and potentially have some kind of a pilot program. And I don't know what the funding allocation would be. I don't know any of those details, but I would love to see that come back to council. And, I'll talk to city manager offline to see, what more we can do and any potential baseline ideas that our in-house personnel have. Outside of that, again, I'm just really, really thankful. And the Buena Creek Navigation Center is a low barrier shelter that is breaking the mold and not being, a congregate situation. Folks are having their own space. And this is the evidence that we need, desperately need in this, not only in this region, but in this state, to show that we can do something much better for folks. So I want to continue to see Buena Creek Navigation Center funded. I want to continue to see what we can do to even bring something within the city boundaries, understanding that we have only a temporary allocation of funding for Buena Creek Navigation Center. It is probably the most successful piece that we have for folks that are already experiencing homelessness. Outside of that, thank you again to everybody. And I'll be listening, so don't get too crazy up here, okay? I got to get going. Thank you.
Briefly, council member, if I could, the city staff has been looking towards the workforce development. We began a discussion with Miracosta's Technical Career Institute, which provides 3 to 6 month short-term certificate programs for individuals. Currently, we are planning on allocating $132,000 worth of opioid settlement funds to be able to fund scholarships to have individuals experiencing homelessness get access to education. We are in discussion to see if the BCNC would be willing to shelter folks for up to 6 months so they can complete a whole program there. Their TCI program has an excellent hiring rate post-graduation, so really looking forward to seeing how we can get that started. Maybe get some extra funding for
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for starting that conversation, and I look forward to continuing that and bringing something online as soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. We have Mayor Franklin.
I agree with the suggestion. I'm also glad to hear that we're working on job training. I think that's very important in teaching people how to earn a better wage so that they can provide for themselves. Giving them a hand up is very important. Thank you again to all those who came to speak, and especially those who shared their personal stories, and for all the good work that all of our partners do every day helping people who are struggling with homelessness. We appreciate the good work and the heart that you have and the good work that you do. A question about the townspeople program. So it's set a partnership with the city of La Mesa. So what does that entail? What is the partnership?
As far as that,
money? Yeah,
the
go ahead.
actual operation, there won't be too much coordination with the city of La Mesa, just that they will be funding a similar program.
Okay, so we're contracting together, but we're not bringing people from La Mesa who are needing housing to Vista?
Correct. We will not be.
Very good. One of the other questions that occurs to me as we, are a couple of months into the Buena Creek Nav Center, and we're on a bullet train towards the end of the 3-year funding. What is the city of Encinitas' plan? We've set aside $4.5 million. What has the city of Encinitas done? What have we asked them to do to think about, when this funding comes up? I know Mr. Sturman had talked about the desire to expand the program. I think the most ready opportunity to expand is to say, as we want to move the facility ideally within our city limits, although honestly, I think it's not a bad location, but if we could find a better, more economical one, I'd be all for it. But it would be good for the city of Encinitas to serve its population in Encinitas also. And so one of the ways, even within our existing footprint that we could expand is by expanding in those extra 12 beds for the city of Vista. So we should, thank you, we should think about, and ask them to have a long-term plan. And then I would ask you, what's our long-term plan, and when are we going to begin that process? In other words, I don't want to wait to begin it until we get 1 year out. We could start thinking about it now, conceptually, and if the longer the runway to plan it, perhaps the better our options are. Because I think we were in a situation where we needed to act urgently. I don't want to be in an urgent action situation again. I think we could find a really excellent facility, one that's, the economics of it maybe even better for us. So I'm concerned about that. There's a lot of information here. One of the things that I have to point out, as much as we want to praise our partners and all the good work our staff is doing, and we want to have good news, the reality is the problem is getting much worse in the county of San Diego, and it got much worse in the city of Vista. So for all of the good things that we're doing, not only is the problem not getting better, it's getting worse. So we have to really continue our focus on the data, and we're adding a lot of new programs, and I like some of the goals of these programs. And it's not a commentary on any specific one, but we really need to begin now. I'm sorry that Councilwoman Contreras had to step out because she and I think the entire council were really focused on the data when we began this 4 years ago. And it really is incredibly important that we are able to understand the dollars in and the outcomes out. And, every service provider wants to claim that their program is wholly different from every other program and can't be benchmarked or compared. I don't buy that. I reject that. We have to reject that. If it can't be benchmarked, then it better be something really special. We want people to go from being homeless, unemployed, to being employed and, sustaining their own place to live, whether it's subsidized permanent supportive, whether it's market rate, and they're doing it all by themselves. The goal is sustainable independence, and certainly an end to homelessness for that person. So we really need to start to look at, what kind of dollar figure we're spending per outcome and being willing to benchmark that. And we really need to focus on a greater level of transparency. We need a lot more information about people that have been served and, what the outcomes are, because as much as we have some really good anecdotes, we need to get a lot more data so that we can figure out why the problem continues to get worse. We need to spend an equal amount of time on that question. Why is the problem getting worse? What's the cause of the problem getting worse? I've seen that there's sort of can be a cycle of once you're in the system and a temporary program runs out, it can create a new cycle of homelessness. So I think that's something we want to look at too. So I'm going to have a lot of questions. I'd like to and requested the opportunity to go through all this, and I'll accept half of the fault for not having reached out to set a time, but it was my request that you reached out and set a time to go over this data in conference, one-on-one, so that we could get into specifics and I could ask a lot more questions and with a lot more detail and time, and then come back during the public report. I'd prefer to do that ahead of time so that when we get to the public presentation, I really have a great understanding of the information that's before us. But we've gotten so many programs now that I think it's almost impossible to really get into an in-depth review of any one of them during our general update. So I think this is good, but we're definitely going to, I know we have Jewish Family Services. I'm very interested to hear some discussion on the fact that we're coming to the end of their contract. My understanding is I've been told that their funding that they had brought to the table is no longer on the table for a continuation of the program. So I think that was 50% of the funding. Is that right?
Currently, it's approximately 50% of the funding, but we still have more discussions. We're finalizing negotiations this afternoon with them.
Okay. So yeah, I think if our costs are going to double, then I think we need to take a hard look at what the economics based on the outcomes are, especially in light of the fact that we do not have BCNC open. So I'm not predisposed to either direction there. I just want to have a hard look at that, given the loss of that funding. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll jump in here, and I agree with a lot of the comments so far. I support Councilmember Contreras' comments about workforce development. I think tools and skills can be weapons against poverty that we can help put in someone's hand. I also agree with Councilmember Green that the rental assistance program, and I agree with the mayor as well, that we want to be looking at each of our many, many contracts on an individual basis, because I do see some of these more preventative programs being extremely effective. And if we have the opportunity to apply a little bit more funding to rental assistance, and we may evaluate that some programs are not really meeting our goals, then I'm definitely going to go with the most effective programs. Quick question about the rental assistance programs. I have more questions to the side. So I do agree with that. And I also agree that we want to be planning ahead. I appreciate that statement, Mayor, the long runway for identifying where our city shelter will be next. And that is also, a way for us to, in the long term, evaluate that program. I agree about the data. One of the questions that's come up for me in this presentation is, do we have data on the current state of resolution of homelessness for people? So for every person experiencing homelessness, how likely are they to die on the street? How likely are they to exit into stable housing? How likely are they to be reunified with family, and so on and so forth, or get market rate housing or what have you? Do we have information? I'm specifically curious about, loss of life. I think that if our strategic plan to address homelessness does anything, that it should be aimed at saving lives. And it's something I'm aware that the lifespan of someone on the streets is severely limited. So would you have any information on if someone's on the street, perhaps for over a year, of that population of people experiencing homelessness we're not keeping up with the problem. We're not resolving people's homelessness. Folks are still out there. More than we're resolving people's homelessness, people are becoming homeless due to cost of living and poverty, as well as family crisis, mental health, all of these things. So am I right in my assumption that we're not keeping up with the problem?
As far as our unsheltered residents dying on the street, we have reports of some of our clients engaged with services who have unfortunately become deceased. We can certainly work with the fire department and the sheriff's department to collect information on how many unsheltered residents have deceased on the street. It's not something we're currently collecting, but I'm sure there are records we can obtain for that.
Maybe there's regional information, if you could investigate that a little bit further, loss of life on the street. And then, are we, let me know if I'm explaining this question clearly. Are we intervening and resolving homelessness to a greater extent than people are becoming homeless?
The data would show that the rate that people are becoming homeless continues to outpace the number of people exiting homelessness.
Okay.
In fact, RTFH has reported since they began to collect that information, I believe 20 months in a row, that rate has remained the same, and that people falling into homelessness continues to outpace the number of people of exiting homelessness.
So our goal is to prevent the flood, right, and reduce the flood of people becoming homeless, and then as people become homeless, intervene quickly and resolve quickly. I'm supportive of that. I had a couple questions. What would be the reasons for the negative exits for the JFS program?
Primarily due to program violations, behavior issues, and other things, just not following program guidelines. Of course, we require everyone to meaningfully engage in case management. If they do not abide by those, we want to make sure we provide those available spaces for other clients who would be able to better utilize those services. So majority of those are for program violations.
Okay, and I'm supportive of reserving those spots if we are seeing a low utilization. But I also I'm not pleased with the amount of negative exits, and I would have hoped for more positive exits. I understand that one of the reasons why we have low positive exits, or not as many positive exits as I would like to see, is because of the lack of permanent location for people afterwards. maybe people need a little bit more time. Maybe they obviously need more housing options. So just wanted to know what the reason for those negative exits would be. And if there's any way we can mitigate those through screening, but we don't mitigate those through screening because we are low barrier in that program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in regards to the mayor's comments, I'm very comfortable looking at this and saying, is this the most effective program that we have? Is it worth the cost? When we allocated surplus cannabis revenues to fund this program for an additional several years, we kind of put ourselves in a vulnerable situation where that was looked at as, oh, the city has money now, and our contractor was less inclined to partner with us as fairly as I would have hoped. So I'm hoping that the negotiations with JFS will result in an understanding that the city is thinking about the long-term survivability of this program, because I don't think it's worth us fronting the entire cost. It's not that effective of a program for us to pay for all by ourselves. So I would hope that, at risk of losing this program to the community, that our partners are able to be supportive to the long-term goal. If we could have this program for multiple more years, we might get better outcomes, better data, we can fine-tune it, right? But for that to be completely on the onus of the city is just not, I don't think it's economically sustainable for us, for this program in particular, when I think that we have other programs that are a little bit more successful. And maybe there's another partner out there who does want to go 50-50. So I'm always open to that. I was disappointed in hearing that, but I'm hoping that the negotiations are favorable for us. Another question I had was with encampments. I saw some news recently about encampments and storage obligations. Are we at risk of any type of lawsuit or claims against the city if we don't have storage provided for encampment removal, right, and being able to store people's items after they're being displaced from an encampment?
We do currently store property for 90 days. If they're unclaimed, then they are discarded, but we do keep them
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Where do we store the property?
at the Public Works yard.
Okay, and are those lockers? How is that stored?
As far as I know, it's a sea container, and so it's a locked storage facility where individuals' property are marked and dated,
Okay,
so that when we review it every 90 days, we will discard any items unclaimed after 90 days. And on the notice of property removal, there is a phone number for them to call, and they can collect that at any time.
and we think that 90 days is sufficient for
Yes.
that transition? Okay. Another question I had with the encampment resolution funding, I think that our goals are ambitious for that, to install new staff positions and to provide more housing coordination via rental assistance, family reunification, and other things. I'm a little bit concerned, though, because it is a lot of staffing and rental assistance, additional funds. I would like to see, and I'm wondering if we would be competitive for the grant funding if we were to envision more permanent housing options and housing programs and traditional transitional housing programs as part of the encampment resolution, right? So do we have, we can obviously coordinate folks from the encampment resolution funds into that stable housing that we have, but it's not being included in the grant application, is that right?
So the requested funds with the encampment resolution funding through the 3 rounds, there's been a lot more emphasis and focus on placing folks directly from encampments into permanent housing. So things like interim housing, transitional housing, those are not as favorable or competitive as placing them directly into permanent housing. So the majority of the funds we're requesting are for the rental assistance, which could potentially put them directly into permanent housing.
Okay, so we're completing our application based on what we think is going to be most competitive to get the grant funding. And it's not additional shelter beds that will be more competitive. It's those funds and coordination services to get someone into a
Directly
leased
into housing, yep.
situation. Okay. I think the only grievance I have with that is providing rental assistance, and it's the same grievance I have with our rental assistance program, our VEHAP. When it comes to rental costs, there's really no limit to the profits that a landlord can make. So we will, in these programs, one of my criticisms is that although they are extremely effective at preventing homelessness and, someone actually gets into housing, one, it's not always sustainable for that person because when the assistance ends, what happens to that person who might not have the income to make rent? But also, there's just no limit to how much landlords can charge. And so I'm concerned about the city putting more and more funding towards rental assistance programs when my vision would be to have more permanent and public housing options and low income, low cost, market rate housing options. In the long term, I don't want our city to be shoveling out significant funds to landlords when there's no limit to the profits that they can make. But I do think that there's a lot of housing options that I would like us to explore. I appreciate the part of the presentation at the end where we discussed housing and the importance of housing. So I'm just going to put these ideas out there. Housing, this could be both market rate and public, dormitory style housing. I think dormitory style housing would be very effective for people who are coming in from encampment resolution. Tiny homes, converting underutilized commercially zoned buildings into apartments, permanent supportive housing with ongoing services, which we are pursuing, acquiring existing single-family homes and coordinating transitional or cohabitive housing. And also, I really appreciated the conversation earlier, workforce-specific housing, also student housing. That could be city employees, local industries and professionals, but yeah, definitely students, especially if we have the opportunity to partner with MiraCosta, right, on workforce development. Could there be a workforce student trainee housing combined with some sort of workforce program? I would like to see that. And then have been working internally a lot on tenant protections and supporting the city's efforts there with our contract with CSA. So I'm satisfied with what's in front of us now. I just have some warnings about what we're going to do about the continued raising rents and cities like ourselves providing rental assistance when there's no end in sight to how much rent is going to cost. And I want us to definitely be able to evaluate our programs on an individual basis, if that could be something that staff brings back to us. But I think what we are able to do here with this strategic plan is we're preventing homelessness, we're intervening as it happens, and we are, I think compared to other cities, we are resolving homelessness through the provision of housing. So I'm pleased with that. So thank you for this presentation. You don't need any movements from us today. We're giving some feedback and receiving the information. So thank you for everything that you've done to prepare for this workshop item. We'll go to Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you. For the sake of not being redundant, I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions that were already asked, but one, I just want to thank you all for your work. I want to thank all of our partners as well. The women that were here to share their story, I think it kind of speaks to a greater thing that we've all discussed on this dais, is that you're told to work hard, you're told to go get an education, you're told to do all these things, and in spite of that, even with rental assistance, even with having job assistance, all these different things, it is still a tremendous struggle to try and find the ability to afford a place to live while having all of your everyday needs met. So I just wanted to thank the individuals that were sharing that story, and also just for the community to understand, like, everybody has a story, right? These are the success stories, but there are people that are on the streets that we've seen over and over again that as much help as we try and give them, it's very difficult to get them over that hump. And so that's why I think these programs are so important, because we're trying to move the needle in that direction. I did have a question, though, and this is kind of a vague question that you might not have an answer to, and the mayor kind of touched on it, that it seems like it's getting worse despite all of the programs that we're implementing. And so when you look at the data from 2017, 18, and 19, specific to the point-in-time count, which I know is not something you can always rely on, but you see the numbers slowly trending down. So from like 206 in 2017 and 154 in 2018 and 2019, even lower. And you see this sharp rise from 23 to 24. Has that been consistent throughout the county, or is that specific to Vista? Like, I know that I've looked at the North County region, but as San Diego as a whole, did the numbers jump that drastically? To see a 93% jump seems a little egregious.
We'll have to go back and compare the data for the rest of the county. I will say, of course, starting in 2020 was during COVID. There was a lot of emergency assistance and rental assistance, also moratoriums on evictions. So that's probably why we saw a pretty drastic stopgap of people falling into homelessness. Of course, now that emergency assistances have expired and the price of housing continues to rise exponentially, we're starting to see a rise back in unsheltered homelessness.
Well, I guess my other question would be, was there something happening between 2017 and 2019 that led to the decrease prior to COVID?
That I don't know that I have a answer for you now, but I can certainly get a consensus from some of our stakeholders and follow up with you all.
Yeah, and I'm this is just speculative on my part, but the most recent point in time count, it was unseasonably warm for that time of year, which I think led to a lot more people being present and not in shelter beds or not deeper in areas that are going to be protected from the elements. So I think this is actually a number that's been more reflective upon the reality of what's taking place in Vista the last few years versus what we've seen in the point in time count. So those are all my questions, but I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. This was excellent work. I just want to thank all of our service partners and providers that we've been working with as well. And I mean this so sincerely. The Buena Creek Navigation Center is a beacon for what everybody should be following coming out of there. So thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you, Mayor Franklin.
When we first received the $250,000 from Tasha Borna-Horvath, then Tasha Borna-Horvath at the time, I had suggested that we ask the people who are receiving emergency housing assistance to make a commitment to participate in some financial literacy program, like budgeting, work with a counselor, to make a pledge to do that, not to sign their first child away, not to be imprisoned if they didn't, not to have to owe the money back if they didn't, just to commit that they would sit down with somebody and get some. So, I mean, obviously, they came to a financial crisis, likely because of affordability or other reasons. I sit down with the people that work for me, my employees in my business, and when they tell me they're struggling financially, I say, well, let's talk about what you're spending your money on. And it makes a big difference when you have a budget. I had a budget. I still have a budget. I actually create a written budget for our family. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't know what they're spending their money on. It's an academic exercise that's incredibly important. And if you don't think about how you're spending your money, then it makes it really hard to be organized. And I think and I hope that that's one of the things that we say. I mean, this doesn't have to be complicated. You can do it on a notepad this size. But having somebody that you trust, that you look up to give you some advice there. So all I wanted was to really connect those people with that resource. I didn't want to make it where they were going to be punished, fined, penalized, have their car crushed or their dog taken away from them. No penalty. No penalty. Just, we're going to give you the money to help you. We'd like you to commit to participate in some, maybe we get, I know that at Operation Hope, because I know, I think there's Brad Peterson and some other people we know that are financial advisors. They come in and they do this. And I think it's great that Operation Hope provides that. The council at the time was completely resistant to this idea. And again, I'm like, because there's no penalty. No penalty. I'm just trying to connect people with a little bit of coaching and counseling. If they don't do it, we're not going to call them up. We're not going to hire a collection service. Hey, you didn't keep your promise. But if they would commit to participate in that, and we could connect them with that kind of a service, wouldn't that be a benefit to them? If they don't show up for it, they don't show up. It is what it is. There's no penalty. But the council was completely a hard no on that. I don't know why, but I'd like to reapproach it. It's such an obvious thing, and a lot of the service providers do it. So why, if somebody is in financial crisis, would we not want to connect them and ask them to commit to, connect with those services? And if they don't, we don't go after them. It's not we're not going to jail them. So I want to lay that out back on the table, and I'd love to hear the council all agree that we want to connect people with those services. I mean, just as much as we need to, I will join you, and I will wholeheartedly support every program that helps people help themselves, because those programs that, if you train somebody they're going to teach their children to do the same thing, right? And then maybe they'll teach your children. These things are learned generationally, are they not? Right? They'll pass them down. So we need to get this information in people's hands. So I'd love the council to agree to just connect people that we're giving. Did I read right? $20,000 a piece is the total amount under VHAP that each individual could. Did I read that correctly?
10,000.
It's 10,000.
20,000 in housing assistance for ERF3 might be what you are thinking of.
It was on a slide, and I tried to find the slide so that I could reference the number, but it looked like a lot of money.
If I may, I can also add our VHAP administrator, Mac, Kim Barbaran, who's with MAC, is here today, and I'll defer to her to anything else you might like to, but MAC does provide other financial literacy type resources, including counseling, budgeting, that all of our clients have access to. It's not required. It's not a barrier to receiving VHAP, but it is available for all of our clients.
MAC is brand new in providing this service. We were with Lifeline with the pilot. It'd be nice to, also get some data on this. Is this an effective way to help people long term? Do they find themselves in the same financial crisis a short period of time later? That would be nice to know. Do we follow up with people? I love that the Navigation Center has somebody that's dedicated to data collection and data analysis. We really need somebody probably here at City Hall. I think one of the most important pages in the update is page number 2 of 64 in the agenda report, which shows that we budgeted now $16 million. This is not in your presentation. This is, oh yeah, there we go. I've got a more detailed version of this in the agenda report that shows from what source and to which program the money is dedicated. So we spent $4.6 million. But I would like to know, and I think the taxpayers deserve to know, that we have called people and said, hey, I'm the data analyst with the City of Vista. You receive money through Lifeline, through MAC, and we're doing a follow-up. We want to help other people who are going through the same situation that you're going through. We want to help people the best way that we can, and we are wanting to collect some information. Nobody will know it's your information, anonymous, okay? But we should be following up with people for 5 years. Once we give people $3,500, $5,000, $10,000, why would we not be willing to follow up with them and make a friendly inquiry to find out if that money might have been better served if we gave it to Operation Hope? Or maybe it would have been better served if we would have found a housing provider to master lease who could lease out rooms within multifamily units, tackling the affordability issue, particularly targeted at individuals who are exiting homelessness, right? Imagine if we took this money and we put it into that so that people leaving the Navigation Center, Operation Hope, had a place to go to where they could be for 12 months or 24 months, and then if we could get them into that financial counseling, I understand, I was just updating and reminding myself, it's important we all look at the BLS, San Diego Carlsbad wage statistics. The federal government does extensive work in collecting average wages. And then I also like to look at the fact that McDonald's in Vista is hiring right now between $20 and $22 an hour. There is work out there that's meaningful, and when we look at the ability to share resources, things like having a roommate, which literally have your housing expense, that's an obvious, intelligent thing that we can help people do. I'm really a believer. I hope this thing with townspeople works. I need to understand that program better and how it works, but the idea of, I love this idea, and I don't know how much of that's in this. I think some of it is, but we should be partnering roommates. We should be helping them with a legal agreement that they sign between each other. We should be providing mediation services. There should be an organization out there that really helps people that are having affordability challenges partner up, especially, the people that are, they're younger, they might be more willing. Whatever it is, most human beings, there's 2.5 people for every housing unit in Vista. So people are not living alone. We're social creatures. We're meant to live with others. I've lived with roommates, college roommates. I shared an apartment for years with a friend, when I was young, before I went to college. And that was the only way I could, if I moved out of home when I was 18, and that was the only way I could afford to live. And it didn't always go well, My roommate left his dishes in the sink. I didn't like it. We had arguments about it. They were heated. So you need that dispute resolution service. If we could make that easier for people, whether it's through master leasing, and we could subsidize if we need to, we could subsidize with a ramp down to market rate. There's all kinds of creative things we could do there. But if we don't have the data, we got $16 million here that we're spending. The problem's getting worse. What we're doing is definitely helping some people. And we know that because we can find the individual stories. And that does and should make us all feel very good. And it does. It makes me feel great. And I know that we're helping some people. But my goodness, for $16 million, we ought to be able to help some people. How many people can we really say that we got off of the street and into a permanent housing situation for the $4.6 million that we've spent so far? My fear always is if we took that number of people and divided it into $4.6 million, and it winds up being a number that's a lot of money, it's like, well, I would hope that, for that amount of money. And I don't know I'm not going to guess at what that number is, but my guess is if we took that number and we divided it into this, it's a very large number. And we need to be willing to be transparent and lay all the cards on the table. We have nothing to hide here. This is the public's money. We need to be willing to do the math and get to the bottom of which expenditures have had the best outcomes so that, again, we can reduce expenditures on programs that don't succeed, increase expenditures on ones that do. And I'm really a big believer in focusing on long-term independence. If you're not severely mentally ill, if you have an illness that can be treated and cured, or in remission, like addiction, we ought to be helping people get into remission, get healthy, mentally, physically, and give them the educational skills, job training, and we ought to be giving them some basics like MAC is doing and like Operation Hope is doing. We should make that a part of all of our programs. I don't know if JFS does that. I don't know if we're doing that yet at BCNC, but I think that's really important. So And now I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 programs now. So I'm a little frustrated this morning because I can't get into the level of depth that I want to on all 14 of these things. So we're going to have to start working through them one at a time and really understanding. But this is where, I'm just going to put it to the council, like, we've got a plan here to spend $16 million. If this was your personal $16 million and you hired me to spend it, you would really want to know what I did with your $16 million, right? Like, you would really want to know, because it's your $16 million. I think maybe we need somebody to really just be accountable to us for the data. That's what they do. And when we have questions like the ones the deputy mayor posed, or questions that I'm coming up with, or any of the council members, one of the most important things we could do, and Jonathan and Daniel, you're working towards this, homogenizing the reporting, homogenizing the terms that are used with our glossary. That's super important. But then as we change service providers, I think it's really important for the city, and I actually wish it wasn't the city of Vista. I wish there was a regional authority. Like, I wish, some group out there for a larger area, maybe the county or somebody, or maybe it's a conglomeration of the cities, would homogenize the reporting such that every different service provider isn't using a different report. If we ever want to be able to solve the problem of homelessness, then we have to submit to the reality that there's got to be a comprehensible way to compare outcomes. The dollars going in are comparable. Dollar here, dollar there, they're all the same. But the outcomes, the chief outcome we're looking for is sustainable recovery from homelessness. So anyway, I could go on, but I think I got that out there. So the fiscal literacy, and I'm really excited about the mass releasing and helping people with roommates, because I think that's a huge way. It cuts your rent in half. All right, I'll suspend.
Thank you, Mayor. I would love to respond to your recommendations. I've always been supportive of giving people those services to help themselves, sitting down and doing a budget. I used to sit down with clients and do budgets with them, and it was actually a requirement in order to receive our rental assistance funds for the program that I've worked at previously. And so I think that budgets are great. I think that when they're not required, there's no penalty, but they're at least offered, that they're a great thing. I'm fairly certain that we offer, within case management, the ability for a client to sit down with someone and do a budget and maybe even refer out. I know that different programs like Education Compact and others, they have specialized services for that. So within our Boyne Creek Navigation Center and our case managers there, are they equipped to do budgets with clients?
Yes, it's actually in the intake packet the clients receive when they come into the shelter. It has a full blank budget for them to work on with their case managers.
Awesome. And do people usually volunteer to do that? Is that an activity that people feel empowered to do? Maybe Pete or Hannah could speak to that. Okay. And if people don't comply, do they get kicked out? No, but they have the opportunity, they're empowered to do it. So we are having people do budgets. And it's kind of similar, it reminds me, budgets and other structures like that, it reminds me to the conversation we had recently, Mayor, about the medical care, the physicals that we want people to do. It's like, we really want people to get their physicals, right? It's really important for their health. We really want people to do a budget. It's really important for their long-term skills, but it might not be required. So I do support all of the work that our case managers do in all the different programs, which we do have a lot of programs here. And maybe we could get it parsed out as well, where the funding is coming from with each of these programs. And in the packet, it is broken down, but not in quite a bird's eye view where I can assume, right, that our permanent local housing allocation for our social worker outreach and engagement through Exodus Recovery, that's funding from, is that the federal government?
That's the state.
The state of California, that's right. And then we have CBDG and state earmark for a homeless prevention pilot program previously through North County Lifeline. Those were both state and federal funds.
Correct.
Okay, so if we look here, we have year-end fund balance that was funds allocated directly from the City of Vista coffers. We have cannabis revenue and some other funds, but a large number of the funds for the programs that we've been able to accomplish have been awarded to us. We have been innovators and initiating programs that we intend to be successful, and we have been awarded funds that allow us to do more. We are still responsible for the efficiency of these programs, and when we're in a situation like with the Safe Parking Program, we were initially able to launch that program with a combination of funds from JFS and funds from the county and funds from the city. But we may very well be in a position where the city is fronting all of those costs, and it might not be an effective use of our funds. So I'm absolutely prepared to reevaluate programs based on the cost burden to the taxpayer. But the display that we have here really speaks to our ability, our staff's ability, and our council's vision to develop programs that get awarded monies. And I'm really proud that we've been so successful at that. I would love to learn more about master leasing. Is that similar to what I described earlier, where the city acquires a unit, right, or a housing facility, whether it's a single-family unit or an apartment complex, and that we are able to lease it back? So do we have any preliminary programs like that? Are we investigating those?
Yeah, so with our grant proposal that was already awarded with townspeople, that is exactly what the city intends to do, but it'll be done through a subcontractor.
Okay. Well, I am really grateful for all the information that we had. I think, Mayor, if it pleases you, I would like to, as a standing committee, maybe we can couple some of these items, and I think we've given ourselves pretty good direction to evaluate some of our programs and take a deep dive into some of our programs. I know that we've been receiving updates from our partners and contractors, but this way of looking at it is really where the costs are going. So I would like for us to come together and look at those programs. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you can spend $16 million. I mean, we don't have anybody that's just dedicated to crunching the numbers here at City Hall.
No.
I don't see how you can spend $16 million and not. I've never been happy with the level of data. When we started this conversation 4 years ago with the strategic plan on homelessness, the whole thrust was on the data. And I've asked staff, particularly the ones who have new positions or have joined us since, to go back and watch that meeting, because the council was very clear about its direction on the data accountability and collection. That was to be the focus. That was to be first. So what would it cost us to hire somebody to do that, to crunch the numbers, Mr. City Manager?
Fully loaded, it's probably $150,000 to $200,000 a year position to have a analyst type, come in and do that.
I think the question is, can we get ERF money for that?
We likely could. That would take a pretty considerable revision to the proposal, and I don't know that we would be able to do so comfortably in the allocated remaining time we have. I will mention too, of course, the mayor is familiar with some of the data that, for example, the Taxpayers Association or other agencies have attempted to determine. It's very difficult. It's very complex. at the level of probably university studies. That is probably what the mayor is hoping for. I think we can look into that, maybe engaging with the university to see if there's any interest in providing that level of analysis.
Sure. I'd be willing to work with one of our local universities if they have, I'm looking for people that are really, I'm looking for more of an egghead than somebody who's into the policy of homelessness. I want somebody who understands mathematics, spreadsheets. I would prefer somebody who is dispassionate about the politics of this. This is really a financial analysis, and the numbers should speak for themselves, and we can all draw our own conclusions from those numbers. If they're impartial, then they won't be a bias in any direction. But, with all respect, I don't want the fact that we've done a few incredibly good things to cloud our judgment and for us to go, if 1 or 10 or 100 people got helped, then it's okay to spend $16 million, because we start dividing the money we're spending over the outcomes that we can celebrate. The current state of California, the current state budget is $22,000 for every one of the 180,000 people that's homeless, according to the state's report to the federal government. $22,000 a person. I mean, at what point do we not just buy homes for people and just start giving away houses, because the cost would be so less? We're creating this massive homelessness industrial complex. Lots of salaries has become a huge part of the economy, but the public wants one thing. They want the people that are living on the streets, that they see living on the streets, they want those people housed. They want them to be well. They want them to be cared for. They want them, I think, to be rehabilitated, to be able to live independent, successful lives if it's possible. For the ones that's not possible, they want them to receive the permanent supportive services that they need. But so this doesn't specifically relate to any one service provider here, but nobody wants to focus on this half of the conversation, measuring what we're doing such that we know that we're getting the great effect out of it. And we should be working with all the other cities that are investing in this, and we should be working with them. There should be a working group where we're coming up with common reporting. We should be willing to be held accountable and measured against our other cities. We should have reporting formats that are homogenized with others, such that the newspapers, the academics, the citizens can hold us accountable, because we need the public to help do that. We need to be accountable for how we spend the public's dollars. And when we spend ever greater sums of money into the many millions, we're into the tens of millions of dollars just for the city, the state is spending billions and billions, and yet the problem continues to grow exponentially. If we're not going to be introspective and examine how we're spending the money, then I think we don't have our heads straight. So,
well, if I could speak to that,
yes.
I'm supportive of hiring someone to give us the ability to make decisions based on efficiency of programs and highest, best use of funds. We might be challenged with how we use state and federal funds to acquire that person. I see it being a worthwhile investment for our city. I'm grateful to the other members who attended today. It was a little surprising that we had a full body. But I think that would be favorable to everyone. I think that's a recommendation that we could put forward. And I also know that it's not just evaluating programs, right? But there's so much we can do with the funding that we have. I know that I led our council in previous years to take PLHA funds and redirect a portion of those funds away from what I think many are critical are revolving door services of homeless outreach, and for those funds to go to something like permanent housing. So anywhere where we can use funds to stabilize and resolve homelessness and permanently house someone, we know that that's going to be most effective. Those tend to be the greater costs, right? But if these interventions are worth it, we have to ask ourselves, compared to what? I think the conventional way of just providing an endless barrage of services, that's part of why I left social services. And I've talked about this. I was frustrated that there were not housing options for my clients. I would try to advocate within the organization where I worked. I got some pushback, and I started advocating for affordable housing. And in advocating for affordable housing, I realized, I want our local municipality to do more, and I got involved with our local government. And I think we still can do more for permanent housing, right? A parking lot is not the same thing as a long-term housing solution for someone. And if it comes at a cost to the public, I agree. They want to see it resolved. We are the greatest country in the world. We should be able to do this. And if we have someone on staff to evaluate our program costs and really break it down, what is the cost per person and what is this program worth? I was thinking about that recently, even in regards to our other amenities at the city. How many members of the public do our park services serve, right? Are they really serving as wide of a breadth of members of the public as we can? How many members of the public is our infrastructure serving? And can that be better aligned to have the highest public benefit? And the same with our homelessness services, breaking down each program. So I don't know exactly where we would allocate the funding, $150,000 a year. Maybe it's a contract, right? Maybe it's a contract with one of the universities. Maybe it's not something we need to have on as a permanent solution, position, right? Because it's really finding someone to get us the information that we're looking to have about our programs. So I'm supportive of that. Maybe we don't have consensus from our whole council, but we clearly have consensus amongst our standing committee to pursue a position to analyze the data and efficiency of our programs. But from a bird's eye view, we do know that we are making a difference, a meaningful difference in people's lives, and we are saving lives, and we are making good use of available state and federal funds. How long those funds are available, it varies, right? We know that for our rental assistance program, those funds will be expiring before we had even planned, right? And we're running out of funds there. So not only are there timelines for these fundings sources from a grant perspective, but there's also, clear competition within our programs, right? And we should have healthy competition amongst our programs. Which one of our programs are the best, and we can challenge ourselves to do better. I don't have the answer for that. I think as a standing committee, we can continue to evaluate our programs, perhaps with professional staff who can get us more data that we're looking for. And from there, I think that some of the programmatic recommendations that came from today's meeting, hopefully you can incorporate them as we go forward. But I'm satisfied moving forward. I just know that we'll continue to have these discussions.
And I can see the city manager, I can read his mind. He's thinking, let us get back to you with a recommendation on that. And I agree with that. I mean, I don't have the specific, and I agree with you, maybe it's a contractor. I would like to first start with, and I always ask this, Jonathan knows, who else is doing this? I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I hate reinventing the wheel. I feel like we've reinvented the wheel on a number of occasions, and maybe that's because nobody else has a wheel. And if that's the case, okay, but there's got to be some good work out there, and in analyzing these dollars, I'm really looking for formats that make the data more understandable. question on this chart on page 2 of 64. Again, it's not in the presentation, but on the appropriated and expended, what time period does this cover? Is this all 4 years of the?
Yes, from adoption, which is March 2020 through March 2024, so 4 years, correct?
I like to see 4 pages, one by year for each of the 4 years. I'd like to have that level of detail. That way we can understand. It's important to understand the space and time in which this money is being expended. So this says VHAP has only expended 88,000 of 1.4 million. Is that because these numbers are?
They're only through March.
They're only through March.
Since March, VHAP has spent very quickly.
So all 1.4 million is almost gone.
It's about halfway there.
Halfway, okay. I've always been troubled. I mean, honestly, everybody loves the idea, and they say it's cheaper to keep somebody from being homeless. Yeah, if you know who's going to be homeless, how could we possibly know that? So what we have to wind up doing is giving a large amount of money to a large number of people, and I honestly can't help but wonder, like, when people figure out, okay, my neighbor got $8,600, I wrote down here, is the average that we've expended so far. $8,600 per person. Anybody have any argument with that number? So when you find out you can, if you don't pay your rent and you get a 3-day notice and you come and you get your $8,600, I mean, if my credit wasn't good already, I would have to seriously think about, like, that's a lot of money. At what point are we incentivizing, right? And to say that every person who has an eviction notice is definitely going to be living on the street or in their car the day after they get evicted, that's not true. That's just not true. They probably have some real tough choices. I don't know how many of those people would have lived with family, but probably a lot of them would have called a friend or family member. If my family called me right now and said we're getting thrown out of our rental housing, I'm not letting them live on the street. They're going to live with me. I like it, but that's what's going to happen. So I just want to make sure the money's going. The real issue is the triage. A lot of money is being injected and spent, and the people that are on the street, that number continues to grow. I just want to make sure the money is really finding the people that need it the worst. We got to talk more. The League of Cities asked us to sign this letter against the Chris Ward legislation, which created these 2 new bans for subsidized housing. One of the things, Deputy Mayor, that you and I have both been talking about is prioritization of subsidized housing for people who are in the greatest need. That legislation that former Councilman, now Assemblyman Ward, is championing creates those 2 lower bands, which I think, I don't really understand the legislation. I'll be the first to say that. But I think what it looks to me is he's trying to create the ability to make specific housing for those lower bands. And I think what he's trying to get at is he sees what we're seeing, which is subsidizing for people who are at 120% of AMI. Doesn't really make sense until we've, I'd like to get every person in the lowest echelon of income help before I help anybody at 120%. Call me crazy if you make 120,000 versus you have a household income of 25,000. I would like to help the people at 25,000 first, and before I even help them, I like to help all the people that can't afford any house and they're living on the street. Which is to say, I'd like the subsidized housing to be open first to the people that are exiting from Operation Hope and from the NAV Center. That should be the priority in any new subsidized that we build, and we're doing that in the project that we're working on right now, but we haven't done that in the past. And if we're going to subsidize, I'm subsidizing for people making $120,000. I just can't wrap my mind around it, and because the average household income now in Vista is what is it, is it 83,000? 83, 85,000? So the average family in Vista can't wrap their mind around why somebody that earns, 50% more than they do is qualifying for help. Doesn't make any sense. Let's see. Oh, single room occupancy. I don't know what's going on with the Vista International company. Did they name Vista International for this project, or is that the name of their?
That's the name of their company. They're just
they're out
at
of
the
Montreal.
final throes of their building permit process. They had some difficulty with their electrical permitting, but they should be online this summer.
Named Vista Del Mar.
Oh, is that what they're calling it?
Yeah.
Vista Del Mar? When I go and look at the rescue mission and their Mission Academy program, which is their one-year program, and when I look at Urban Street Angels, did you ever get down there and see their dormitory?
Yes.
Why would we not have a dormitory for people? Like, if I was homeless and I'm living 2 to a bedroom at the NAV Center for 30 to 120 days, why are we not building dormitory-style housing? It could be market rate, private, or we could subsidize it. Why are we not building a dormitory product for people that really need an opportunity to get permanent housing? Have gang restroom facilities. I didn't have an ensuite when I was a kid. Is that a human right? Is that in the Constitution to have an ensuite bathroom? I don't think so. That's what they do at Urban Street Angels. And they have everybody shares a bathroom like you did it's better than living on the street. And if we can create, right now, what percentage of people are able to access the subsidized affordable housing? We've got 774 units, 1.8%. It's a 7-year wait. Why are we not allowing people to build a dormitory product? Why wouldn't we work on that? And we go, hey, we've got a room. It's not a big one. Doesn't have its own private bathroom. But we got a room for you. Maybe there's a roommate. Maybe there's not. But it's built in a way, and with those permanent on-site services, to give people a longer term, it's transitional housing, right? But it can be built in a way that's more economical. That's exactly what Urban Street Angels does for transition age youth. And I think there's a lot of people that if they're living in an encampment right now, exposed to the elements, I would think having what size were the rooms there at Urban Street Angels? Were they like 10 by 12 kind of a thing?
No, at Urban Street Angels, at least from the ones that I saw, probably 100 square feet or so.
They were
beds
college
for each.
dormitory
Yeah.
size room.
Yeah.
They were not big, but and they were cinder block construction with painted walls. And they had like college dormitory style furniture in there. And they had, a gang restroom facility. And that's a very economical way to live because you can house more people in a smaller area. You got less fixtures and less build-out cost, less maintenance cost. And if that gets somebody off the street and somebody who's at the NAV Center could go live there for like a year while they figure out, that's not a place for anybody to live forever. That's not the point. The point is, how can we get them into a transition, get them the services they need so that they have a runway to figure out and go through recovery, tackle addiction, get their job training, get their college education, whatever they want to do. Why are we not, we should be focused on allowing people to build some of that.
That was my list of housing options earlier, dormitory-style housing. We've talked about this. I think we're getting closer to actualizing it. I'm sure the zoning is different in San Diego, but what was the zoning that allowed for, and was it market rate? Was it public housing? Are we familiar with how it was financed and structured?
I'm not familiar, but we could look into that.
Yeah, let's look into that. I know that if we build any type of, and in your imagination, Mayor, how many occupants would be at this City of Vista located facility?
What I'm preaching is, and what I believe is, every city should do its part to serve the people who are homeless and in need of housing in that city. And so, I don't think we need to build enough for 500 people. I think we need to build, if we had 100 transition, opportunities, that would make a meaningful difference in how many people we can exit from our programs, right?
Or even 25 in each
Sure.
district, right? If we're just, imagination exercise, how things actually get constructed is another question. But I know that these conversations are, when we move forward with ideas like this, the public has a lot of concerns about things like parking, about sight lines, about neighborhood feel and stuff like that. So I've been very receptive in District 3. When we were first looking at our safe parking program, I was, hey, I'm sure we can find a spot in District 3 for it. Our neighborhoods would benefit from it because there's people sleeping in their cars in those neighborhoods. So, and as much as I've been thoughtful today about JFS and the safe parking program, I think it's a service that every city should have. And I absolutely think that every city, including Vista, should have some sort of, dormitory-style congregate housing that it actually provides something for someone beyond the shelter, right? Because we have a huge gap. We have services to prevent homelessness. I believe we have sufficient shelter options, but we're really missing those longer-term transitional and permanent housing options. So, what would our city need to do to permit it, to allow the zoning for it? What would the city of Vista need to do to build it ourselves? I would like to explore this.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it too. And maybe I think you got to do like 50 units in one place. Otherwise, the economy of scale can't be achieved.
Certainly.
But maybe 50 would be a great start. I lived in a really, really tiny apartment for 10 years. It was an efficiency apartment. It was all one big room. It had a separate bathroom, but I wanted to live alone. I lived with roommates that was the only time in my life I had no roommate. So I rented a very tiny place, and that made the rent affordable. So if I was single, I'd be happy to have a small place. If I had to share a bunk, but that meant I could live inside with a shower facility and restroom. Following on, we have did we get a date finalized with Luke Bergman's office on this special treatment?
For the proposed board and care that we're considering?
Well, they told me it's not board and care. I'm talking about, I went down to Lakeside and I saw the special treatment facility.
Yes.
And they insisted, and Charity was there, who works for Luke Bergman, for the county. They insisted that special treatment is not the same as board and care. Because my understanding is board and care is not for people who are conservatees.
Board and care is not, no. It's all like an adult residential facility, assisted living facility, yeah.
I'm switching gears for a second here on this special treatment, okay? So I put this up on the internet, so anybody that wants to see it can go to my social media, Office of the Mayor of Vista on Facebook, and you can see these pictures. But I'm just going to show them real quick to the deputy mayor so that she can see what the public can go on right now onto the internet and see. This is the facility in Lakeside. This is their occupational therapy room. This is a small dining room for the family that they can come visit you. Everybody's got a bathroom, so they do have ensuite bathrooms here. This is the big group dining room. This is a single occupancy. Most of the rooms are double occupancy. This is staff offices, a hallway. It's all bright, brand new. That's the front of it. Special care is the name. It's all single story. So the point is, most of the people that are going to be served in that facility were homeless on the street before they went into that facility. These are all people who are in conservatorship. The county has punted for 1 year, and I think, what do they have, 6 months or 4 months left on that first year on SB 43, which will allow people who are narcotic addicts to be put into conservatorship. And then they have the option to punt for another year. But then after that, there has to be a place for these folks. What's great about this is It looks, from the outside, it looks like a nursing home. They called it egress controlled, which is a nice way to say you can't leave. The people that live here are not in custody of their own persons. They're in the custody of the state. And so they're in this program. And they explain they teach these people the 27 ADLs, or activities of daily life. How to comb your hair, brush your teeth, take a shower, clean your clothes, just how to become a human being again, right? How to be functional and take care of yourself. And they're trying, some of these people will never be self-sufficient again, but some of them will. This is another thing I think is probably incredibly desperately needed, because you can't leave the facility, and because from the outside it looks like a nursing home. And by the way, the operating budget, $22 million a year. There's a lot of staff that work there who are highly trained, well paid. This would bring good jobs to our city. But because the people are not at liberty, who are patients there, to just wander off, they're not going to be walking down the street, asking you for help at Circle K, or, they're not at liberty to go and, find drugs. They're not at liberty to go and commit crimes. So the impact to the community, based on my initial analysis of this, would be zero, because the patients are not coming and going. However, it provides an incredibly important place for somebody who is suffering mental illness and addiction disorder, like the woman that I encountered in front of Vista Paint, who was hit by a car and her leg was all torn up for the rest of her life because she couldn't get herself to the ER and wouldn't let anybody help her, and insisted that she owned the Vista Paint building and that she lived in the second floor. It was a one-story building. I mean, those kind of experiences, there's somebody that obviously needs some structure and a place to live, tackle her mental wellness issues, addiction issues. We really need this kind of a product. And I know you've been talking to the company that operates it. I really think we have to look seriously at being willing to provide a facility like that, because I think that's very different than the board and care, because the board and care, I think you can come and go at your liberty. This is really important. And then what I think a lot of the service providers will tell you is, if these kind of, there's a very small percentage of the people on the street that need this kind of facility, but if it's available, our Governor Newsom has said that we need to focus on this. Our legislature has now accommodated with SB 43. We see the need to get people who are too sick to know that they're sick off the street. This, I think, we have this big proposal at Green Oak Ranch. To me, this doesn't belong at Green Oak Ranch. To me, it belongs to, in somewhere in the right between residential and commercial use, where you would put a nursing home. And we've had some land that's been zoned for that. I don't know if we still have any parcels that are zoned for that, but high economic value to the community, a lot of good jobs, really help people get off the street, and then once they're out of that, we could transition them from that. These are the people that under no circumstances will they ever say yes to go to the Navigation Center. They're not going to Operation Help. These are the people that we're seeing a massive, multiplication of the numbers. And all of this $16 million we've spent so far doesn't help one of those people, not a single one, who say no when we ask them if they want help. We have spent very little, if any, time discussing the population that refuses to come voluntarily to your services. But if we want to know why the problem grows, and we're spending all this money to help the people who say yes. There's two kinds of people who are homeless. There's a lot of different challenges people face, but there's the people that say, yes, I want the help. And there are the people that say, no, I'm doing fine, leave me alone. For the people that say, no, I don't want help, there's got to be an option, because living and dying on the street is not something that we should tolerate in a civilized society. This kind of facility, so we're going to have a conversation, you'd be welcome to join us, have a conversation with County Mental Health to talk about this. And then I think we need to start looking at where we could put something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have expended $4.6 million on homeless services in the city of Vista in the past 4 years. And before we spend what has been appropriated, we absolutely should be considering what is most urgent and what the state direction is and what the county needs. If we're all working in tandem, then we will be more successful. I see that type of housing facility being very appropriate for people who, if you don't die on the street, you may become disabled. And it is very common, and that's why I'm a disability rights advocate, is because people can become disabled at any time. And so the rights should be allotted to every person, because it can happen at any time. And so for someone who is in those circumstances, they do need way more staffing, way more care. And one of the things I think we should consider in this conversation is what I've heard, my understanding is that we are having a challenge in recruiting, the county rather, is having a challenge in recruiting professional staff to implement our conservatorship programs because those professionals are having a hard time finding appropriate housing. We are missing that middle income workforce housing for folks that are professionals, for folks that have master's degrees, for folks that are nurses. And so if we want something like this to be successful, I totally believe in the economic opportunity. And with many of our industries, we also need that workforce housing. So the housing for the people who are in conservatorships, who need a nursing type facility in the long term. We also need housing for people who would be providing those services. And then, something more like a dormitory style housing is really more for people who are able to be independent. So I think that there's a variety there. I'm prepared to, we've been discussing this with our general plan update. I know that, and it's common sense for many of the members of the public to move past some of our commercial centers that are just sullen and underutilized and inactive, and say, why can't there be something more here, something really of value? So I believe that we have a location in Vista. It might not be adequately zoned. It might need to be retrofitted. We might not have to level everything, but I think that we would likely have facilities in Vista that we can start with, or land that is appropriate for something like this. I would love to meet with the county on it. I'm very supportive of any type of housing. And that was my initial criticism of care court and conservatorships is, yeah, we can put people through bureaucratic nonsense all day long, but unless they have an actual place to live, their troubles are not going to go away. The status that people are on the street, they are in a really destitute situation. The only way that it can be resolved is if they have the dignity of a roof over their head. That roof might look different for every person. I still have roommates. I have a great small landlord, right? And he's a very nice guy, and I have some stellar roommates who I share housing with, who are great community for me. And we have dignity, we have privacy, and I want to extend dignity and privacy to every person in the city of Vista as well. And when you're on the street, you don't have dignity, you don't have privacy, and really would like to be able to provide those solutions for people. So let's continue on those conversations with other agencies. I think I would love to hear from staff a couple of things. Some of the data questions that we had earlier. What would it look like for us to bring on a staff person for data purposes? And housing development, zoning, these care facilities for conservatorship patients, dormitory housing, master leasing. I think that those are all pieces of information that we need to get back before next time. Anything else, Mayor?
That's a lot. There's a lot more, but that's enough for today.
Yep. All right. Well, if there's nothing else from our staff, then we will go ahead and no communications. All right, we will go ahead and adjourn for today. Thank you.
Thank you.